19, and even starting at verse 7 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's fill this in a little bit. In the book of Jeremiah, we hear the story of one of our history's most powerful prophets. Jeremiah speaks truth to power. And in one of the most divisive moments of Israelite history, he speaks. Jeremiah speaks during Israel's wealth as a nation, in the growing urgency as foreign powers approach, and he continues to speak during the Babylonian exile when God's peoples, are forced to wander far from their homes. In this morning's text, verse 7 continues a lamentation which began in verse 1 of the chapter. The people are crying out in pain for their God, wondering how God could forsake them, imploring God's intervention. The first part that we do not get in today's pericope laments the prolonged drought, like Brenda has said, which has decimated their life and provision. Where we began this morning was a lament in which God's people acknowledge their sin and ask God for deliverance. Although our iniquities testify against us, act, O Lord, for your name's sake. Here God's chosen people acknowledge their own brokenness, they acknowledge their own participation in their community's sin, and they recall how their actions have led them into dangerous territory. They have worshipped God other than the God of Abraham. These people have forgotten the impoverished and the widowed. These people have enjoyed wealth at the expense of genocide and prejudice. These people have taken God's love for granted. And yet still they remind God of God's promises. They implore God to act on their behalf, not for their own sake, as they are so undeserving, but instead for God's sake, whose name has laid claim to these people. They cry out, "Yet you, O Lord, are in the midst of us, and we are called by your name. Do not forsake us." And we hear now God's reply. Truly, they have loved to wander. They have not restrained their feet. Therefore, the Lord does not accept them, nor will he now he will remember their iniquity and punish their sins. Sometimes I think in the face of overwhelming grace and love, that grace freely given no matter what. In the face of a loving God, it can be easy to forget how God hurts as the world hurts. We forget sometimes that when we harm a fellow created being, God too hurts deeply. Here in the book of Jeremiah, in this one verse, we hear God acknowledge God's own pain. Unconditional love and infinite grace, these are not easy burdens to bear. God loves a nation of people who have wandered, who have worshipped other gods, have worshipped false gods as well as wealth and power. God loves these people even when they slam the door in God's face, even when they slam the door in the face of a hungry orphan or a grieving widow. God loves these people even though they kill indigenous peoples for their own gain. God loves these people even though they credit themselves with every victory and blame God for every tragedy. Through all of this, God loves them. And we hear in this verse God's admission of hurt. Truly they have loved to wander. They have not restrained their feet. We too sometimes wonder, as those early Israelites, wonder where God has gone. When we see a child struck by a drunk or texting driver, we cry out. When we hear of incidents of violence and sexual assault, we cry out. When we see children die of hunger, or young people killed in the line of duty, or people unable to receive medical care, we cry out. We cry out as these earliest Israelites, "O hope of Israel and Savior in time of trouble, why should you be like a stranger in the land, like a traveler turning aside for the night?" And as we cry out, as we look around us with horror and wonder, how did they get this bad? We suddenly remember our own contributions to that brokenness. Yes, even we, members of Christ's church, even we, and maybe even especially we, contribute to the brokenness of the world. We too have worshipped other gods. We too have worshipped wealth, power, status, and comfort. We too have slammed the door in God's face, in the face of people seeking shelter, safety, and provision. We too have killed, silenced, or neglected groups of people for our own gain. We too have credited our successes as our own and blamed God or others for our pain. The differences between us and those early Israelites are not so stark. This morning and every Sunday morning, we began with our confession and forgiveness. In this time of lament, we come before God in our rawest, truest, and most urgent form. We lay our lives before God and acknowledge our sin. We stand together and remind ourselves that we participate in and contribute to the brokenness of the world. We stand together before God to say that we have not done our best. We stand to remember the times we have worshipped other gods, or slammed the door in God's face, or sought power over the dignity of others. We confess our sin in the presence of God and of one another. And then out of the silence, we remember God's grace. Out of that silence, we remember that God, even still, claims us as God's own. With the Israelites, we say, "Yet you, O Lord, are in the midst of us, and we are called by your name. Do not forsake us." Though we participate in the broken world around us, though we ourselves have been hurt and have hurt others, though in this pain we feel God's pain, we know that God's vision for our world is very different than our current reality. We hear in our forgiveness that God will not abandon us. And as we read from the Hebrew Scriptures and in the Gospels and in the letters, we hear again and again of God's devotion to God's people. We will encounter difficult times, and we will encounter darkness in our lives. But God will not abandon us. Through thick and thin, through faith and non-faith, through doubt and conviction, through apostasy and the cross, through joy and pain, God will not abandon us. In this election cycle, we are perhaps more acutely aware than ever of our world's brokenness. No matter what your situation or political leanings, we might all agree that we are a broken country, that we are a broken people, and that we live broken lives. Our text this morning reminds us that we are not blameless as we look around at the mess in which we find ourselves. Sometimes we cannot point the finger anywhere but at our own brokenness. But we also hear that God will not abandon us, no matter what. And so we leave this place encouraged by God and by our shared responsibility to never stop trying. We leave here convinced that we can be a better neighbor, a more material presence of God's love and grace. We go from here humbled by the knowledge that we will continue to make mistakes. We leave this place confident that through it all, God is there, accompanying us and leading us into God's vision. Amen.